the current healthcare system is a system of sick care and not of predictive or proactive healthcare or wellness care, as it should be. As human beings, we've had an obsession with post-mortems as opposed to pre-mortems. We look at a problem when it's simply too late. I mean, for anyone that's gone through a failed relationship, people go through maybe therapy, they look backwards, but it's too late. Same thing when we do a post-mortem on a body. It's too late to actually give life to the patient again. So as a futurist, I've always been obsessed with, science fiction, with adventures, with space odysseys. I've always asked myself the question, why are people so nostalgic, or why are people so focused on the status quo when the status quo sucks and is largely backward looking? So I always think it's better to do a pre-mortem than a post-mortem. That's when we can actually affect change, both on an individual, relationship or organizational, team level. Going on a little bit of a thought experiment, a space odyssey into the future, you might ask yourself about your body. Imagine that it's now 2040 and on your watch, you've suffered all of these chronic diseases. Yeah. Maybe you've been drinking too much or smoking too much or whatever it happens to be. And you go, hey, my body is literally failing me. It's the year 2040. What were the signals?
In a world drowning in wellness noise, fitness fads, and curated perfection, we're here to talk about the reality. This is a space for the experts who have the data and the humans who have the scars. We're stripping away the bullshit to look at the areas of health that don't get enough attention and the evolution of how we'll live tomorrow. I'm Krystal Perkins, and this is Unfiltered, the truth about being human. Today, we're talking technology, the future, and health with futurist Anders Sorman-Nilsson. We'll delve into driverless cars, robots, and predicting the future, all things. It sounds like a storyline out of a science fiction movie, but for Swedish-Australian futurist, author, and the founder of strategic think tank Think, Anders Sorman-Nilsson, it's just another day at the office. Anders has spent over 2 decades helping leaders decode macroeconomic trends and transform speculative technologies into proactive organisational strategies, advising Fortune 500 giants like Apple, Google, Meta, and Microsoft. Today, he joins us to discuss the future of health. To set the scene on how desperately we need to change our habits around health, just a few statistics. Our daily behaviours dictate roughly 50% of our total health impact, yet globally, we only allocate a tiny 4% of our healthcare expenditure to support those daily habits. Instead, we pour 88% of our budgets into reactive medical services. Patients in medical consultations instantly forget roughly 80% of the information their doctor tells them during a clinical visit. By 2030, 1 in 10 Australians are predicted to be on GLP-1 or weight loss medications like Ozempic. This is a shift so huge that retail giants are preparing for an 8% drop in grocery spending. From AI in healthcare to the massive, unexpected economic ripple effects of GL1s, Anders is taking his macro trend expertise and translating it into useful, real-world strategies you can use to optimise your health long-term. Welcome, Anders, to Unfiltered.
Thank you, Krystal. Great to be on your very, very exciting show.
Thank you. Anders, I want to start by setting the scene for the audience. We're currently facing what has been described as a healthcare crisis. We've heard some of those stats before. You've written that we are actually at a unique place in history where we have to completely reconsider everything we thought we knew about health and medicine, which is fascinating. From your perspective as a global futurist, what are the biggest cracks in the system that we can no longer afford to ignore? And what can we do to avoid these on an individual, community, and global level to try and counteract these trends or cracks?
So a couple of reflections there. I think largely the current healthcare system is a system of sick care and not of predictive or proactive healthcare or wellness care as it should be. And I think in many ways, as human beings, we've had an obsession with post-mortems as opposed to pre-mortems. We look at a problem when it's simply too late. I mean, for anyone that's gone through a failed relationship, people go through maybe therapy, PTSD treatment, whatever it happens to be, they look backwards, but it's too late.
Yeah.
Same thing with, when we do a post-mortem on a body, right? Or on a failed project at work. It's too late to actually, give life to the patient again. So as a futurist, I've always been obsessed with, science fiction, with adventures, with space odysseys. Further down the track, I've always asked myself the question, why are people so nostalgic, or why are people so focused on the status quo when the status quo sucks and is largely backward looking? So I always think it's better to do a pre-mortem than a post-mortem.
Okay.
And,
talk about that.
Well, that's when, we can actually affect change, both on an individual, relationship or organizational, team level. It's to concretize it a little bit more in practical terms. It's, going on a little bit of a thought experiment, a space odyssey into the future. You might ask yourself, about your body. Imagine that it's now 2040, right? And on your watch, you've suffered all of these chronic diseases. Yes. Maybe you've been drinking too much or smoking too much or whatever it happens to be. And you go, hey, my body is literally failing me. It's the year 2040. What were the signals that you ignored? What were the investments in your body, in your health, mental or physical, that you just delayed and delayed? And what other decisions did you ignore making that led to that demise? And instead, what change would you make today to prevent that from happening? That's a pre-mortem. So at a systemic level, it's a system of sick care, not health care. And I think the mindset needs to shift from post-mortems to pre-mortems. And I think now we have the technology, we're at a paradigm shift where, through wearables, whether it's, Aura or Whoop or whatever it happens to be, or, smart watches, we can catch problems before they occur.
Yes.
And that's very futuristic and I think very, very exciting. And I think we need to grasp this opportunity with both hands. It's
amazing when you talk about it in terms of, the preventative measures that need to be taken. The health cost of actually treating someone after the fact is so much higher. So health economics, I think in Australia, it's about 100,000 per person. It used to be to treat an individual. It's skyrocketed in the last few years to hundreds of thousands of dollars because of post-care. So we're off the cliff and we've fallen off it, and we're dealing with the aftermath in terms of our bodies, but also economically in society. So public health measures and policies are still focused on post-health issues as well, which I find interesting. So then in terms of the global healthcare system, it seems we're facing a massive dual crisis of clinician burnout and operational friction. How do you think, and you've just talked a little bit about AI and technology, but how do you think AI and other technologies can serve medicine?
I'll give you a couple of good examples. Yeah. One is about my GP, Dr. Erin Noonan at Newport Doctors, who's an amazing doctor, very trusted GP, and how she's using AI to see more patients, but also to do the work that she's actually meant to do. And the other example is, I just had my bloods done like you do when you're a middle-aged male or female human being.
I need to get mine done, don't worry.
and I got those bloods done the other day, and it's just like a long chemical list of things that I'm not necessarily tuned into as a non-medical person.
What does it even mean? Yeah.
So of course, I feed that through Claude to actually have some meaning to it, because the text message I got back from another GP, because Dr. Erin Noonan's on holidays at the moment, so I had to see someone else from the practice.
Yeah.
I got a text message back saying, your bloods are unremarkable. And I'm like, okay, that tells me absolutely zilch, nothing. And no one wants to be unremarkable. It's just like, your cholesterol's, average is kind of where, the average population is. I was like, I'm interested in longevity. Like I'm interested in optimizing my health. I want to get feedback on what I could be doing better, what I should be eating more of, should be doing less of, nudge me economically, behavioral economics into better decisions so that I can live to 100 and have a really good quality of life while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So that's just one area of the system that sucks now. And the fact that I should have to take all my bloods and feed them into Claude, the AI engine, who then put some color on it.
Right.
As opposed to that particular GP, actually visualizing and going, hey, here are the little levers we could look at.
Wow.
So that's the first thing. So I think, just getting a bunch of numbers is going to make no sense, even to someone who's been to university, et cetera. I'm just like, this means nothing to me. So let me then look at how, from a burnout perspective and a GP, medical practitioner perspective, Dr. Erin Noonan has totally changed the game so that she can actually bring more of her humanity, empathy, and care to patients. So
great.
So when I sat down with her, I've got you probably have real hobbies, but I live in a semi-off-grid cabin at Mackerel Beach, and one of my hobbies is...
Sounds fantastic, yeah.
And I'm Swedish, and it's semi-off-grid, and so I chop wood, and but obviously I've got terrible technique because
great for mindfulness.
Very good for mindfulness, yeah. And it's it's not the wood chopping yoga move, but it's actual real wood chopping.
Great.
With an axe. Very liking of me, I know. And anyway, I injured my L5 on my spine, and I went to see Dr. Erin Noonan. Clearly, I've got sucky technique, and I was like, "Hey, what do I do? I'm in pain. This is not like." I know I'm hit middle age and stuff, but like, can we make this pain go away and fix me? And she's like, oh, it's a slip disc. Like it is, Anyway,
yeah.
But she goes, hey, remember like how last time you came in for something else, I used to have to turn my back onto you in the consultation, break human eye contact to punch in all the electronic medical health records.
Yes, of course.
This move is, it's culturally, and I'm doing this for illustrative purposes now.
Yeah.
But it breaks human rapport. And she goes, I've got this AI medical scribe now called Heidi Health. And I go, you had me at hello, I'm a futurist, please tell me more. She's like, would you mind if I record our conversation on Heidi Health?
Right.
I go, please do. She goes, Heidi Health's vision is to reestablish eye contact between the clinician and the patient.
Yes.
And she goes, I used to do 2 to 3 hours of paperwork every day.
Of course.
Meaning I couldn't see as many patients. Now, because of the medical scribe, she can see more patients. Her queues have been compressed. They're shorter. She gets to see more patients. And she goes, Anders, did you know 80% of what gets said in this consult will get forgotten, as you alluded to? She goes, would you like a letter in year 4 English automatically generated by the AI so you fully understand what actually happened here with all the medical terminology translated into your native language of Swedish-Australian non-medical English? So you know how to medically adhere to whatever I'm recommending. And then she goes, by the way, any referrals to specialists like the radiologist she referred me to gets automatically written by the AI, not by her. She gets to go home sooner from work, see more patients. She makes more money. But she goes, Anders, I didn't train for 10, 12 years medically to become a glorified medical scribe.
Yeah.
And in that sense, what it's doing, it's taking the robot out of the human. So she doesn't have to do the menial and the mundane, the boring shit.
Yes. Yeah.
And she can actually do more of the meaningful and the humane. Her passion, her, as the Japanese would call it, her ikigai, her reason for being, her life's purpose is to treat patients, not to do paperwork.
Getting back to patient care, patient-centered care,
absolutely,
front center, communication, connection, as you talk about. It's incredible. I had a similar scenario with unremarkable blood results, and as I shared, was diagnosed with bladder cancer. And I felt the same. I thought, this is deficit language. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Well, so if you flip it on its head, does it mean that there's not much to see here? So that's a good thing?
Yeah, or not.
Or not.
Yeah.
And so I had to unpack it as well. But I think some of the examples you're talking about around doctors just talking to people and humans, they've lost that, I think. And I had similar, scenarios with urologist doctors and registrars and others, and it was the back still turned.
Yeah.
They're not even adopting AI and technologies. And I think certainly in those specialist areas of healthcare, they should be.
In every area, I think. And, there are certainly doctors who have better, bedside manner than
true.
others.
Yeah.
But I think, human eye contact, actually just the body language of sitting and talking to each other is so much more powerful than someone turning their backs and going, oh, we're, electronic medical records. I'm like, there's a smarter way to do that. And it's good for everybody when an AI medical scribe comes in and does that work that actually no human really wants to do.
So it's that analysis and visualization and, as you say, colour. So helping someone join the dots on the so what of their results. Is that what we think AI is possibly helping with now, but what do we think it might do in the future?
There's this notion that there's left brain people, right brain people. There's, there's more nuanced, psychometric tests around this, like the Herman brain dominance instrument, for example, that tests for, 4 different types of thinking, across left brain, right brain, but also more cognitive and more sort of practical thinking. It's a great tool that I like to use in my own work, but also find quite illuminating. But it's been a helpful way to think about where my strengths and weaknesses are.
Right.
So
okay.
my strengths are in the sort of, cognitive and, both a little bit of left brain and right brain, but my left brain is not a mathematical brain. It doesn't think in spreadsheets. Like my worst subject at school was maths. Okay. But I can see patterns and visualizations, and I'm very good at estimating things. But if you're asking me to punch out a spreadsheet or like create macros, I suck. And so when I think about, my medical practitioners that help me, or my accountant, most of them speak a language that gets totally lost in translation for me. Because I think in terms of pictures, synthesis, metaphor, language, like a humanist. But when it comes to like admin and numbers, like they're like the plague to me.
Sure.
So I actually need someone who can translate all the data.
Yeah.
And turn it into a story. Story is data with a soul. Yeah. But if my accountant or my medical practitioner just give me numbers, I'm lost. So AI has the ability, and any empathetic doctor or accountant, whatever it happens to be, who can translate their expertise into somebody else's way of thinking, that is a massively important opportunity to actually have people adhere to their, their medical, their physical, even their business health, right? Because otherwise things get lost in translation, like the epic movie, and we just don't take action, and then huge opportunities get lost.
It'll be fascinating to see how rapidly things will change in terms of all facets of healthcare. Healthcare,
but also like, I know it's totally off topic, but like even like accounting, like now Claude integrates with Xero, the accounting software. Right. So now I can have a better conversational outcome talking to Claude, the AI, than my accountant who has 0 people skills. Wow. You do have some people skills, Steve. You're empathetic, but I get more nuance and more understanding of my books. Yes. And this is a metaphor for, of course, health as well. It's my business health, but the same would go if Claude does a better job than Dr. Erin Noonan of explaining stuff. I'm like, well, and we know that the largest usage of artificial intelligence and the LLMs in Australia, for example, and globally in Western economies, is using the LLMs as a psychologist. So for people's mental health, this is where people totally over-index. So yes, they might go and see a physical, a human being, IRL psychologist once a week, once every 2 weeks. Yes. But in between sessions, they're peppering their AI psychologists with questions at the same time. Yeah. And I think this is awakening, and it's an opportunity. It's not to say that the advice is always good from the AI, but it should keep everyone on their toes.
Yeah, and always think critically.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a little bit before about science fiction, and you've also said that humanity is entering an era where science fiction is rapidly becoming science fact. What do you mean by that?
The way to understand where we are now, I would say, is largely a matter of going back and watching science fiction movies from the past.
Okay.
So one of the best ways to forecast the technologies that will be emerging in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years is to watch science fiction movies that are being made now. But if you're looking at a lot of the technologies that might even be in this room, right, they're technologies that might have appeared in, say, The Minority Report, early 2000s movie with Tom Cruise, where they're looking at predictive crime or crime prevention, and they have these 3 precogs that are in this like weird soup, and they're able to like forecast if someone's about to commit a crime before they've even committed it, and so the police step in and they actually prevent the crime from ever happening. That feels like very forecasty, science fiction-y. But in terms of the gesture technologies that Tom Cruise uses and displays in the police force in Los Angeles in that particular moment in time, it's set in 2047, I think, or 2057, I forget. But go back and fact check. Yeah. And but those gesture technologies, they emerged because Steven Spielberg went out and had a panel of futurists advising him on what the future might look like. The technologies were then embedded into the movie, and then a few years after the movie is released, we've got those gesture technologies embedded into VR, into smartphones, etc. So science fiction is becoming science fact. Oftentimes it's a science fiction author, a futurist, who comes up with the ideas, and then over time they actually filter through into reality.
Yeah. Wow.
Other examples of this is the gold standard for AI has been the Turing test, so named after computer scientist Alan Turing.
Yes, yeah. And
it's a blind test, think of the movie Ex Machina, another great science fiction movie again. It's a test to see in a blind test where a human doesn't know whether he, she pronoun is interacting with another human being or with a robot. The AI, the robot, is so sophisticated it can fool us into thinking we're interacting with another human being as opposed to an AI.
And this is happening now.
And this, of course, feels eerily similar to things that are happening now. Yeah. The movie Ex Machina, another sci-fi movie everyone should watch, is about the Turing test. And that's playing out all the time now in terms of content we consume. OpenAI, to illustrate that point, OpenAI ran a test with ChatGPT a couple of years ago. So we've got the science fiction of the movie.
Yeah.
And it went out to ChatGPT and was like, hey, can you meet the gold standard online to see whether you're a robot or if you're as smart as a human being, the CAPTCHA test. Now, I don't know about you, but I frequently fail the CAPTCHA test online.
Right. I haven't taken one.
Oh, haven't you? When you have to see all the traffic lights, or can you spot the zebra crossing, or the 9 photos, and you have to see
fast.
the bike, whatever. Yeah. I get them wrong all the time. So maybe I'm a robot, maybe I'm a cyborg. But OpenAI was like, ChatGPT, do this test. And ChatGPT was like, this is difficult for some reason. It makes me a little bit nervous about autonomous vehicles that they can't see a zebra crossing, but that's another side conversation.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT was like, okay, I'm going to go out and manipulate a human being on TaskRabbit, the international equivalent to Airtasker, pay them some money and they will do the capture test on my behalf.
Wow.
And
that's calculated thinking.
Yeah. So the human got a little bit suspicious and went like, well, like, why on earth would you pay me money to do the capture test?
Yeah. Okay.
And
the human was thinking critically. Good.
Like, are you a robot? And ChatGPT responded by gaslighting and manipulating the human being and went, in an age of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how dare you accuse me of being a robot? I'm just vision impaired. Shaming the human into submission. And of course, the human carried out the task, getting some money in the process from ChatGPT.
So using psychology on the human.
Exactly.
Active
so it's scary.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is science fiction is becoming science fact. We see, the early warning signals or just early future signals oftentimes in science fiction movies.
Yeah. And
then over time, we now have a technology now with Claude, Perplexity, ChatGPT, etc., that is very, very good at pretending it's human. So yes, science fiction is now very quickly becoming science fact. And some of it is just also not, and I go back to an area I don't necessarily like, but it's just becoming mathematics. Yeah. So when people kind of go, oh, well, do you predict the future? I'm like, well, some of it actually is just exponentiality. So now there's a new Moore's law for agentic AI, which the old Moore's law used to be that the 18 to 24 months, computing power would double while coming down in price at the same time. So you understand, exponential growth curve coming down in price, deflationary. Great, but for agentic AI now, it's doubling every 3 months. So every quarter that someone sits on the sidelines and is like, no, I'm not going to use Heidi Health in my business, their competition does, and the competition gets 2x as productive in the next quarter, 4x in the next quarter, 16x in the next year. Like, that's significant. And then, like, which doctor would you rather see? The one who's 16 times more productive than someone who sat on the sidelines.
Yeah.
So
and
long answer.
Cheaper as well.
Yeah.
But I think, as he's saying, like, in terms of that exponential growth and the rapid pace, Elon Musk has said that, in 5, even 10 years' time, people won't have to work. It will actually be a luxury. You won't need superannuation because AI will do everything for you. What do you think about that in terms of his future vision? And what does that mean for humanity in terms of purpose?
Yeah, I think the purpose meaning question is really, really important in all of that, because I think even psychologically, people have always been attached to their profession. They're like, I'm a plumber, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm an accountant, or, people like my dad's, like, he's military. So, like, he defines himself as, a retired colonel in the Swedish army.
Yes.
Like, that's
yes, that's right.
That is like
identity. Yeah.
From your Air Force history as well.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, like, he loves his little, like, little badges and stuff. Like, that's who he is.
The symbolism. Yeah.
And, well-earned stripes, obviously. But so if you no longer are part of a guild or a profession, I think people are going to have to ask themselves some very serious questions about who they authentically are as human beings. I think it's a double-edged sword in a sense. I actually think it's going to be extremely liberating for people that have been forced by, say, intergenerational trauma or other, they're like, hey, we've been in the Air Force for 3-4 generations. This is what you will be doing.
Yes.
Or like, like
societal norms.
Yeah. And then be like, like that, people have always been in the wrong professions, I believe, that were forced into something because they just want to earn money. Or survive, or whatever it happens to be, societal norms. So I think that could be hugely liberating. I think for other people, they might struggle with their purpose. I've just actually come back from Tokyo last week, doing work with Coca-Cola over there with their Japanese and Korean teams.
Right. How was that?
It was great. But it was interesting. I was like, they invited me to talk about the intersection of ikigai, which is the Japanese notion of life purpose, reason for being, which has had a bit of a sort of Western journey of acclimatization, like in the West, we love, adopting karate or, fusing things like matcha latte or, adopting, Squid Games or, taekwondo, karate, whatever it happens to be. But they invited me to talk about the intersection of ikigai and AI.
Yeah.
And my view is that AI will help liberate our ikigai or our life's purpose to a whole another level. Because when the robot does all the boring shit, we're actually free to be creative, free to express ourselves, free to be authentic.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's a huge liberating opportunity. And there's some great exercises, that your audience can actually do. There's some really great YouTube videos on how to find your ikigai, your purpose, which does evolve over time. But I do think that the concept of ikigai, and we've westernized it and added like how to make money from it. But essentially it's like the concentric circles of like what you're passionate about, what you're good at, what the world needs, where you can make an impact, and also what you can make some money from. In the West, we've added the money bit. That's not part of the original Japanese notion of ikigai. But I think it's also, practical. So some great YouTube videos out there that I find useful, and hopefully the audience finds useful, because I think particularly in this era, it's like, well, if you don't have to do all the boring stuff, like what's your driving force? What's your inspiration? Where do you want to make an impact?
Sure.
I'm sure even your journey, like you're making a great impact with this podcast and your work at the moment, like that surely comes from some kind of like awakening, and then the technology is here to
help with it. Yeah, as you're saying. Yeah, I think it is. And I think, in terms of the purpose and identity is everything, your values, your core. And what you're talking about as well is adapting, how we humans and cultures and societies adapt. And, in terms of being able to do that, it's about coping, it's about, change and managing that and being resilient. And so it'll be really fascinating to see how generations go with this technology. Will we be resilient in adapting? And as you say, which I think is a great way to think about it, optimize what's going on in life, and get back to ourselves and our values. And
I think the technology, I think also the COVID massive behavioural change project we all participated in. Yeah. And also just like some social stigma around mental health have been removed, or we've lifted a conversation about people's shadows, as Carl Jung called it, like, shadow psychology. Actually, not just talking about our optimistic, amazing parts of ourselves, but actually digging deep into also our shadow self has been something that I've been observing very closely. I've been doing work over the last 18 odd months with the Brisbane Broncos, with their executive leadership team and their board. And I'm super proud of what they're doing. A few months ago, I took my kids up to a Broncos game. We go to Fairview, and the club's sort of beautifully adopted me and my boys, which has been amazing.
Great. And what are they focused on?
So one of the things, and this would never have happened when you and I went to school.
Yes.
Is it 25 years ago? 30 years? Oh, gosh.
At least,
But, no bloke on the rugby field would have talked about feelings, or in the locker room would have addressed anything yucky or been vulnerable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, in June this year, during Men's Mental Health Month, the Broncos run onto the team in their all-black jersey. A collaboration with the Black Dog Institute to raise awareness of men's mental health and mental health more broadly as well. And the ikigai, the life purpose, the connective tissue with the Black Dog Institute is the idea of see each other.
Right. Yeah.
And I get goosebumps talking about this, because I'm like, in 25, 30 years, Australia's come from a place of like no bloke would talk about emotions.
generations of men suppressed, repressed.
And it's so important. I mean, 75% of suicides in Australia are by men. For divorced men, the ratio of suicides for divorced men versus divorced women is 9-1. For Indigenous men, you 2.5x that on top.
Yeah, it's harrowing.
Harrowing statistics. So for a club that were the premiers last year, who went through a massive comeback, displayed resilience, but have also been leaning into some of the shadows of telling the stories of some of their, team members, what they've been struggling through. This year they're not performing as well, but they always come back.
Yes.
But really leaning into that from a health perspective, I think is beautiful and totally of the moment as well. But it shows you we've come a long way as well.
Yeah.
There's still work to do.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Growth in terms of the club, the business and the people. Just thinking about that and also, what we talked about before, some other statistics, you just mentioned mental health. We talked about weight and the ripple effect of GLP-1 use in society. You've predicted that by 2030, 1 in 10 Australians will be using GLP-1 receptor medications like Ozempic and Wegovy. What is the broader impact of that?
I mean, it's got so many second-order impacts as well. I'll give you some of the effects that we've already observed in the United States that have been, a little bit of an earlier adopter than in Australia. So, for example, the second order impact. So beyond the weight loss that's evidence based and all the rest, 25% of people who are on GLP-1s in America have totally dropped alcohol.
Okay. Wow.
They're just they have
as a side effect or just no?
I mean, depends on your approach to alcohol, but is it a side effect or they've just lost interest?
Okay.
And just totally given up. Some people would just say if you want GLP-1s to really work, get rid of all that extra sugar and ethanol or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe they do it for a health benefit. But across the board for people on GLP-1s, they all drink less, even if they haven't become 100%, non-drinkers. So it has massive second-order impact on, say, Australia's wine industry.
Yes, of course.
What happens on the farm, good and bad. So that's one impact in the United States as well. For families where at least one person is on GLP-1s, the grocery spends dropped by 9%. Yes. These are, so the Woolies and the Coles of the world are just going, okay, how do we repackage our food? Is it all Mr. Muscle this? Are we going to boost protein because we know people need more protein to to work on their lean muscle mass. So
it's all changed.
So it's and it's become a culturally very, very acceptable conversation at dinner conversations. I actually went out with a mate of mine the other week for I'd come back late at night, so I stayed at his place. I come back from interstate, stayed at his place in Paddington, and we had dinner the first night. The next day we went out and had breakfast, and he ordered what we'd like. I ordered my, it was a Wednesday, and I was like, I'll go fancy. I'll have the eggs Benedict.
Okay.
And he did the same. He's like, yeah, I'll join for that.
Yeah.
The difference was I finished my food.
Oh.
I'm not yet on GLP-1s.
Right.
I'm but
okay.
he is. So he had
yes,
maybe 15% of his meal, and he's like, I'm full.
Wow.
And I'm food. At first I'm I grew up in the era in Sweden where you're it's food waste,
yes.
so,
yeah.
Likewise, my grandparents would have been how dare you not finish your food?
Yeah.
And now that's becoming culturally normal. You're also seeing restaurants now across the board, particularly in the United States, like Stanley Tucci's restaurant, for example, in New York. They now have mini margaritas.
Wow.
And they'll serve a mini burger that's like this with 7 chips, because that's what all people are eating when they're going out.
Wow.
So these are some of the second order. Yeah.
And servings.
Yeah.
As part of the menu, but still charging the same.
They should. There'd be better margins, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Half an olive with your martini. So these things are obviously happening. I mean, I'm also sitting back and observing it because I'm hearing about, second order impacts as well, and people going, okay, well, what are the long-term effects of this? Because there's also reports now, particularly amongst females, emerging of people losing a little bit of that zest for life because they're like, we're losing weight, we look great, but we have no appetite, lower libido, we don't actually want to play with our kids. Like there's all these other things that are emerging. So I think I'm neither bullish nor bearish. I'm just observing what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating. Like you're talking about households. I know in some where, friends or family members are taking the drugs to help with diabetes, to help with obesity, and then their partner is also taking them because they just want to lose weight, but they're not actually, they've not
on
been
the regimen.
prescribed. It's like, wow, can you actually just do that?
Yeah.
And so I'm having conversations with people where I'm saying, look, I've lost weight from eating and exercise.
Yeah.
How did you do it? And they're saying what you said. I'm using these, medications to reduce the amount that I'm eating, and I've lost X, Y, Z. But are you exercising? Are you sleeping well? All the things that I think is the simple things in life are free and are the best for you.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, that adoption of these medications.
Yes.
And how quickly
and then
it's
as you say, people are like microdosing off their partner's medicated regimen. I think there's the internet's ripe for people. Whether it's on Reddits or whatever, exchanging advice on how to microdose with these things as well. So for better and for worse. I think the thing here, though, is that it's also, because it's become such a cultural phenomenon, it's taken the conversation away from the medical practitioners to just Instagram influencers.
Yes.
Again, I'm not saying it could be very dangerous, but it's happening, and it's always been happening. And part of the reason is that some of the people that are online tell a really, really fascinating story.
Yeah.
And the professionals sometimes suck at telling a story. And so, it's now sort of a free-for-all. Yes, it might still need to be prescribed, although then people are kind of going straight to China and getting their peptides, and GLP-1 is just another peptide to buy it off, Chinese manufacturers, etc. So very interesting space to watch.
I think it will be. And in terms of other predictions and trends, you've predicted a massive wave of digital information in our daily physical environments. So paint us a picture of a hopeful future where our living spaces, offices, and the sounds around us are transformed. And how will passive healthcare help us naturally live longer, healthier lives?
As I mentioned, I live at Great Mackerel Beach, like northern beaches of Sydney. It's water access only. It's super inconvenient, but it comes with some good side effects. I live in essentially a tree house, semi off grid. Like got my own water tanks and independent septic system. Too much information, probably. But like it's
healthy living.
Yeah, but I'm like we're surrounded by nature. We wake up to the sound of birds chirping.
Yes,
the lapping of the waves, and my kids' commute to school is like a 12-minute bushwalk through Ku-ring-gai National Park. Then we jump in my commuter boat, and my kids help me with the ropes and like anchors and stuff. And then we get to their school after they've, chased like crabs on the beach. For me, that's like bliss. Sometimes it's stressful if we're running late, but like it also reminds me of like my Scandinavian archipelago youth in Stockholm. And I want to give that to my kids. But there's something to that natural living that I think is a miss in modern society. I mean, even the principal a couple of times, she's like, why do kids turn up and they've got like seaweed on their pants? Like, don't you like wash your kids' clothing? I'm like, I'm going to send you a video of what their commute looks like. It's not like a Touareg tractor, like going from like, you know, a garage straight to the front door of of the school. I was like, it's a little bit different, but I like it. My kids like it. And a lot of those sort of bio-philic environmental elements, I think, are really, really important for kids. There's been lots and lots of studies out of Finland and other places where they've like rewilded schools and playgrounds, and they've taken away all the like weird astroturf and all the artificial shit and been like, play in the mud, kids. And the kids do, and they're like, their gut biome and like they just become massively healthier by actually being exposed through this rewilding. So I think offices, workplaces, homes, I'm a massive proponent of the rewilding. At the same time, I'm also very digital. So this morning, you know, I call it digital nutrition. The birds weren't chirping this morning. Okay. So then, like, I wake up my kids by having a Spotify playlist with Swedish bird sounds. So, you know, easing.
Find it in technology.
I find it anyway. I was like, okay, you're going to listen to the, that's right. Swedish summer birds instead.
Yeah. The meditation apps are doing the same. Aren't they? They're recreating nature and
exactly.
Mindfulness.
And you know, like, even just these elements, like, you know, my commute essentially gets me 10,000 steps a day. And for me, but I'm just like, it's actually an adventure with my kids every day. It's like a little bit of
quality time and connection.
And so I think that's cool. But also this thing tells me that they're like, this is how sustainable this living is for you, because, or not, because it forecasts how annoying the 168 steps up from the beach up to the treehouse will be in 10 years' time for me.
Ah, wow.
So then it goes, actually, maybe you want to do some more weighted training.
Yes.
And, you know, have a little pack or whatever it happens to be, so that in 10 years' time, you can actually still manage this. So that's where I'm like very digital and analog, you know, at the same time. We have to use both, you know, work environments, home, etc.
Walking in two worlds, literally.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's what you were saying before about preventative health. If something is giving you that insight, I mean, we can rely on our intuition and, you know, our human nature for certain things. And I think if you've got, you know, advice or some sort of information coming to you so you can think, okay, what are the things I can put in place now? Surely that's got to be good for, you know, all of us, regardless of age, gender, you know, having that help. Okay, so if we fast forward then in terms of, actually, instead of going fast forward, let's go back to the past, and then we'll come to the present, and then we'll go to the future. Okay, so we call this the inspiring three. If we think about the past, broadly, what can the patterns of the past teach us about the future?
So I'm watching the World Cup and sadly...
Very topical.
Sadly, Sweden only made it through to the round of 32 and got obliterated by France. But there's been another Scandinavian country that's performed better than we have, which is, of course, Viking Brethren of Norway. I look at the diet of someone like Haaland, or Haaland as he gets called in the Anglo-Saxon world. Like, he only eats stuff that his grandparents would have like recognized. Okay. So
the likes of,
it's like offal, liver, tomahawk steak.
Yes.
It's
pure raw.
You know, Atlantic salmon. It's raw milk, raw honey. Like, and I think anyone that's seen him sees that he looks like what people would perceive of as like this like alpha male Swedish Viking, extremely great athlete. But he's gone back to like the sort of ancient ways of eating. But he pairs it up with like being a really keen meditator, and he does yoga for his, a lot of his flexibility training, for example.
Right.
So there's a lot of like the past that informs high performance in the present moment. I think that's really, really, really inspiring to watch. And then I feel like there's a real sort of renaissance as well of like old wives' tales of like in terms of health and what I'm seeing in terms of, I call it digital nutrition. Like any piece of digital content online now is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story. What that means is like this podcast, hopefully somebody else's, it's affecting someone else's brain chemistry to maybe live a healthier life, to take action on something, to maybe have an inspirational thought, to maybe feel supported in their health journey, right? Wrapped in a story that, we're co-creating here. Similarly, a meditation app like Headspace is digital nutrition.
Right.
I use it with my kids. My oldest, my Dr. Erin Nunes said, he might have a little bit of pre-anxiety. So because there's a 9-month wait in Australia to go and see a child psychologist, just like in the meantime, like
it's a long time.
She's like, what stories is he into? And I'm like, Star Wars, sci-fi family. Yeah. So now we sit down on the Headspace app and we do breath work with Yoda. So breath work, ancient concept, right? But digitally with Yoda on the app, Headspace app. Or he uses another app called Luminate, which is like it's digital psychedelics. It's actually just using the camera's spotlight to like, and you close your eyes and it like creates like digital psychedelics, and it always puts him and me to sleep. Doesn't sound like that when you're going, what spotlight on the phone? Like that should be like super like stirring, but it's not. So it's that, I think that combination of like ancient wisdom, old wives' tales, I'm seeing, even what I'm like doing in the morning, every morning, like, it's ginger and lemon, hot water with cayenne pepper to get my body, like boost immunity, get metabolism working. I don't do stuff perfectly, but like there's certain things. And I'm like, where did I learn this? From some Instagram influencer, because it's my brain chemistry wrapped in a story, but it also like connects me with like, okay, that's probably an old wives' tale. Like every time I buy a piece of meat for mackerel, I bring in all my own food because there's no shops or cafes there. I always buy it on the bone so that I turn any leftovers into bone broth and soup. So like 2 nights ago, I had like roast chicken with my kids. And then I'm like, well, all those bones are now with ginger and lemon and parsley and onion and stuff. I'm turning it into bone broth. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it's a little bit of the past, long answer.
Yeah. I think that those things, as you're saying, stand the test of time. And in our ecosystem, they're always there in the environment. So, okay. So then fast forward to the present. What is one healthcare trend or signal that we should be aware of in 2026?
I was talking about this with a client of mine yesterday. It's a large Aussie company in med tech, and something I'm observing at the moment is the sort of destigmatization of mask wearing. And I don't mean metaphorical mask wearing, but
physical. Yeah.
Huh?
The actual physical.
The actual physical mask. So, like whether it's protective, like again, FIFA World Cup, I'm seeing lots of people, like Jimenez, the Mexican attacker, has these like protective masks on the side. There's a few French players that have different protective masks. It's almost become like a cool statement. But also there's people like Alex Hormozi, who's a blogger, influencer, entrepreneurial guru. He's a former gym owner of massive franchise. He wears his like nasal strip visibly every day. And people are just more comfortable showing that they're cyborgs who are either protecting themselves or through like some type of like mask or exoskeleton are actually doing more. Right. And I think it's destigmatizing this old idea that like a physical mask or something else just like illustrated like ill health or something. And instead you're going, okay, well, I wear my, this nasal thing, or I wear the mouth strip at night, and people are very comfortable. Yeah. Even on international flights now, I see people like putting on their like masks and they're like, F it, I don't care. This is my authentic self. I want to look good when I'm turning up on the other side of the world. And so that mask wearing for
protection,
health, protection, beauty, health, whatever happens to be, is a signal I'm seeing that we're getting more comfortable with that.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, let's fast forward then even further to the future. What is your boldest hope for the future of human longevity? Is the final question.
For me, as interesting as the physical optimization is, I'm leaning heavily into psychology, mental health. Doesn't matter how like great your body is, all the nutrients you're packing in, how obsessed you are with longevity if you're like feeling rotten at the core. And so my prediction is that psychedelics, mushrooms, psilocybin, ibogaine, MDMA, DMT, etc., will become totally acceptable in terms of psychedelic-assisted therapy over the next 5 to 10 years. They're already showing massive opportunities, including treating PTSD in war veterans, massive reductions in anxiety, depression for people who have been through through stress and have post-traumatic stress disorders. That interplay between enlightened therapy, but also assisted with psychedelics that help rewire our nervous systems and reconnect us with ourselves, I think is an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful. It's the full circle of life, coming back to nature.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. I mean, the old ways. The plants have a lot to teach us.
Yeah.
The mycelium connects us all.
So you're hopeful for the future of health then?
Yeah.
And human evolution.
Yeah. And I'm like,
with the tech and without the tech.
with the technology, tradition and technology at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Look, Anders, thank you for the conversation. It's been really enlightening and it's been wonderful to catch up. It's reassuring to see through your eyes that we don't see a cold, automated world. We see a future where technology takes the robot out of the human and liberates healthcare and workers so they can lead with empathy, as you talked about earlier, and it allows us to protect our human connection while optimizing our minds. The future of health is human, it's connected, and I think, as you've said, full of hope, which is wonderful. Thank you so much again for joining me today. I hope we can do another session together soon. And I think in terms of, what happens with purpose in life, we focused on Ikigai and bringing that back today to really thinking about great examples in Australia and then globally. My name is Krystal Perkins, and this has been Unfiltered. Thanks for listening to this episode of Unfiltered. Click follow to get notified about future episodes streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Leaving a review helps others find the podcast. And if you'd like to connect, follow me at krystalperkins_1.